All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Market Close. It is Thursday, December 26th, 3:46 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we are ending out one of the last 3 trading days of December. This one, and then you got 2 left. And after those 2 days, you got Friday and Monday. We are done for the year. Now, nothing that crazy happening since the morning. Nothing really I expect to be that crazy happening throughout the rest of the week. But you do have Palantir holding 81. We got some updates on Palantir in a second. We do have Alex Karp that was named the CEO of the year by The Economist. So we'll talk about that in a second. Bitcoin been pretty flat all morning. Went from 99 back to 95 last night. Has kind of held 95 throughout the entire day. The big mover, to be honest, today is Hood. Up 1.9%, breaking over 40. It looks like in 13 minutes, we're going to get a $40 close, which is really nice for Hood. But outside of that, nothing too crazy. You do got Rocket Lab up 7%, which is very nice. Grabs up about 1%. HIMS is up 2%. MicroStrategy continues to go down because Bitcoin is down. Sofi right here up 4%. Sofi, another big mover on the day, $16.65, trying to get back to $17. Square is up a little bit. Palantir slightly down, but holding 80. Netflix slightly down. Outside of that, nothing too crazy. I mean, Google's up a little bit at 197, but besides that, not a ton of crazy movers. You do have Kohler, that's up because of the Bitcoin Treasury stuff that came out this morning. You have Joby, that's up about 10% on the day. Archer's up 4%. Archer was up about 15% last week, so Archer having a great week. But outside of that, relatively insignificant day in terms of tons of movements. Now, the S&P 500 looks like we're going to go green, 601.94, which is nice. A close above 6,000 would be 2 days in a row would be great to see. And then the Qs back at 530. The all-time high on the Qs was 538. It's looking like it wants to try to get back to all-time highs before the end of the year. And so you got markets that are ready to end green, particularly because I guess going into the next 2 days, and we're going to look at some stats on the Santa Claus rally in a second as well. But these are the best 3 days of the market, quite frankly, or at least of December. And we tend to go up on average by 1.5%. And it looks like we're well on our way to get there. Now, let's start off with Palantir and get into that news, and then we'll get into the end of the market close. Yes, we do have some quantum movers as well today, some other movers that are not as large, meaning the small caps. Dave was a big mover today as well. That one, how much was that up? That was 4%. Dave, another one of those fintech companies. I think Dave has completed going up 1,000% this year. Dave's stock is up 1,079%. This is one that pretty much everyone investing in financial services kind of missed out on, including myself. It was not as sexy as like a Sofi, a Hood, or a PayPal or anything like that, but it's up 10x. So it's had one of those years that was not bad at all. Thank you everybody for being here. Let's start off with the Palantir news. We got a CEO of the year finally by the mainstream media. I've been waiting for someone to declare Mr. Alex Karp the CEO of the year. And we got it today by The Economist. So here's what they said. Among our finalists, however, it is Mr. Karp of Palantir who stands out. Over the course of 2024, his company's market capitalization has rocketed from $36 billion to over $180 billion. Its underlying financial performance has been impressive. Palantir is expanding rapidly, with analysts expecting it to notch up revenue growth of 26% in 2024, up 10 percentage points from the year before. It also has become much more profitable, with operating margins doubling to 15% in the 12 months to September 2024. The adjusted operating margins are closing in on 40%. And assigned to its ascendancy, Palantir was added to the S&P 500 index of America's most valuable companies in September. So we did get a little bit of a love from the mainstream media. Now, they go on to say 2 more paragraphs that I'll read right here. Well, I'll read the third paragraph. The first paragraph is just them talking about how Palantir got started. The last paragraph of the article said, the risk for Mr. Karp now is that expectations have soared too high. His firm's forward price earnings ratio, a measure of how richly investors value profits, recently hit 150, far above the average of 22 for firms in the S&P 500. Only 14% of analysts who cover the stock reckon investors should buy it. It has been a stellar year for Mr. Karp. The pressure is now on to sustain the momentum, which I think all of us can agree with. It's been an incredible year for Palantir and obviously for Alex Karp. The pressure now is just, can we grow and live up to a lot of the expectations that are being set? Here's Bryn Talkington on CNBC. She is trimming a little bit of her Palantir position. Here's her thoughts on it, and then we'll keep going from there.
Jim, Bryn, it is your turn. Let's start with one of your big winners, Palantir.
Yeah, so obviously it's been a great year for Palantir. Went into the name around 24, had no expectation in any universe that it would end at 82. I think from a revenue to earnings, this is the most expensive stock in the market. Next year, before earnings, I'm going to reduce the position. I know I'll probably get a lot of hate from some of the Palantirians out there. Love the name long term. They're growing revenues and earnings around 30% for next quarter. I think that probably increases, but I still think the stock is way ahead of itself. There's a lot of options activity in this as well. So when we get to the new year, I'll be reducing part of the position just from I think, a rational perspective.
That's a fair point. I mean, look, she went long at 24, didn't really expect Palantir to do anything crazy. Stock got to 82. I don't think that's the craziest logic for why she is selling. I also don't think she's like super long the name, kind of got into it just to see that what would happen. For those that are long the name, again, my position is pretty simple. It's like if you're long, then trim whatever you want to trim, but long term, some position I think is valuable to have in Palantir. Now, Palantir, what she is right about is one of the most expensive names in software. If we take a look at CrowdStrike, which Palantir gets compared to as well, Palantir's price to earnings are higher than Palantir. Palantir's PE, CrowdStrike's PE is 723. Palantir's PE is, I think, 530. But the price to sales, which is a little bit more of an accurate representation, in my opinion, versus price to earnings, because both of them started getting profitable recently. Palantir's price to sales is 70. CrowdStrike's price to sales is 24. So from that perspective, I mean, you can dice it up whatever way you want. Both Palantir and CrowdStrike are expensive. But you know what's really funny about the CrowdStrike story? And again, CrowdStrike had that epic collapse, Y2K 2.0, whatever issue they had back in July 19th, fell all the way to below 200. And I felt that it was a buy the dip. Obviously, it turned out to be a really good buy the dip. But the funny thing is, when it was at these levels, it's at 366 right now, 380. When it was at these levels, people talked about it as the most expensive, overvalued, bubblish name in software. The quote unquote bubble popped after a bad coding issue that they had. It wasn't negligence. It was just like really an idiotic mistake. But the stock's right back to the most overvalued, bubbly software cybersecurity name ever, simply because people didn't care about the fact that it got to 365. They just wanted exposure to the name. And so it's really interesting. Like when CrowdStrike was trading before their collapse in July, everyone was saying it was the most expensive name, but it didn't matter. Then it collapses, and then you would think people would like keep it not expensive, but it collapsed. And even though it was quote unquote expensive at 200, it was the cheapest it had been trading at since IPO in 2019. And now CrowdStrike is back to these same levels. So I bring that up to say I think that could happen with Palantir, even if you get a little bit of a profit-taking month in January, February, where people like Bryn take profits and this thing trades downwards. I do think people will step in by that dip if they want more exposure to Palantir. And as long as earnings accelerate, I think we're going to see more and more people get excited for Palantir. Rocket Lab right here up 7%. HIMS is up 2%. S&P 500, 602 looks like it's going to get that close above 600 on the day. Robinhood, great day for Robinhood, $40.40. So that's up for Robinhood. Square's up a little bit as well. Oklo having a good day. Oklo right here up 2%. Broadcom also a great day. Broadcom right there up 2.28%. Wow, 245. So we're almost that all-time. 255 was all-time high. So we are just under. So we went from 255 to 212 last week. Wow. Nice little decline on Broadcom off the JPOW presser. And we're making our way right back to 245 in a nice V shape, which is not bad. NVIDIA as well, 140, kind of been flat on the day. Soundhound's up 20%. Did not see that. That one's up 20% of the day. Redwire, this is a name we were talking about with Jason. They are a pseudo Rocket Lab competitor. I don't know everything about them, but this was a name that was brought up on Technical Monday. This one's up 13%. I don't know why it's up 13%. Not sure if there's any catalyst, but this name is getting some love today. Redwire moving along with Soundhound and Sofi today as well. Do you like Marathon long term? I think you can only like Marathon if you believe in sort of their Bitcoin treasury strategy. I'm not a fan of the miners at all. So the answer is no, but if you're buying Mara for the Bitcoin treasury stuff, then the answer is maybe yes. But that depends. Do you believe that Bitcoin will go up enough for them to outpace the rate of dilution versus their convertible debt or convertible note premiums? So 1937 right here on Mara, that's down 3.9%. And that one pretty much is going to trade with MSTR, which is not getting the most love today. That one's down about 4.6% as well because Bitcoin is staying flat at 95,000 here on the day. Nike's up a little bit. Verizon's up a little bit. Google's trading down as we get into the end of the day. Color again up 41%. That's a big one. Reddit was down about 0.5%. Where is GME? GameStop holding 6% on the day. Got to give it up to GameStop. Holding 6%, which is not too bad at all. I still have not watched Squid Game yet. I will be watching it later tonight. I'll let you guys know my thoughts on it. I don't know if I'm going to finish today. Maybe I'll finish it today. Probably not. But I'll let you guys know my thoughts on it tomorrow. if I at least get through a couple episodes. But have not watched it yet. Dave right here, that's up 4.2%. Palantir looking like it's trying to get that $82 close. Got 4 minutes left. Palantir currently slightly red on the day. Yes, the quantum names as well. Does anyone know what the catalyst is for the quantum names pumping today? Or are they just pumping to pump into the end of the year? Because that also might be a thing. Some of these names just might be pumping to pump as we get towards the end of the year and people pile into some of these trades. But a lot of the small caps, including the quantum ones, have caught a bid towards the end of the year. Crypto names, look at crypto, dude. This is why I love Robinhood. Robinhood's the only green name out of all the crypto proxies on the left-hand side of my screen. Everything's red. Marathon, Riot, CleanSpark, Coinbase, Cypher, Iren, BitX. Everything's taking a hit. And really, I don't know why they're taking that big of a hit. Well, the reason why is because Bitcoin was at 99 down to 95, you know? Yeah, that 2% catching a lot of these towards the end of the year. Now, Saylor and Tom Lee did say by New Year's Eve, we're going to be well over 100,000. We still have time. We have 5 days left, but I don't know if we get above that 100,000 level. In terms of Tesla, next week, we are going to get updates from Tesla for the number of deliveries. So here's a question for all of you guys. And again, 1 week from today, we're going to be getting the delivery numbers. Where do you think the numbers come at? Tesla has to get 514,000 cars to match the deliveries equal to its total number from 2023. My guess is I think it'll come in at around 515K. Again, need 514,925. I think we come in right at 515. I could also see it coming light under 514, but I do think that would be slightly above 500 or very close to 500, like 499, 498. I don't think we come in below 485. Last quarter, it was at 463. So now what could blow it out of the park is like 550, 580, 570. And I think that's very possible as well. But to be conservative, but still optimistic, I think 515. I think it comes in at 515. And that wouldn't be the worst for the amount of numbers that we get. I'd actually be very, very bullish going into Q4 for Tesla. So curious what people think. If we get anything above 600, that would be insane. And 514 is what's needed to match last year's numbers. If you get above 514, anything above 514, 514,925, then you have positive year-over-year growth. And no one, including myself, thought we would have positive year-over-year growth on deliveries on Tesla after that horrendous 385,000 car quarter in Q1. Like that pretty much told everyone, all right, people are not buying EVs. But towards the end of the year, Tesla got the incentives right. FSD came out, 0% APR. It convinced me to buy Tesla. You got a lot of people that took advantage of that promotion. And it's not too bad for Tesla. Street expectations, I don't know. I have to check. The numbers aren't out yet, but I would imagine the street expectations are probably in that 490 to 500 range. I don't think they're going to be too low or too high. So hopefully they should be in a reasonable range, and then Tesla can beat them as we get towards the end of the year. All right, folks, here we go. December 26th, 2 days left of the trading day for 2024, 4 p.m. The stock market is once again closed. All right, markets are closed. S&P gets a close above 6,000, second day in a row. Not bad for the S&P. SoFi 1660 up 3.62%. Not bad at all. Tesla down on the day, 454. I think some nice consolidation, down about 1.76%. Not too crazy for Tesla, but it is down on the day. We get Palantir going down on the day as well by about 29 bips, 82.14. Still at $82 close. This is the fourth day in a row of Palantir closing above $80 in the company's history of being a public company. And Alex Karp was named by The Economist as The Economist CEO of the Year. Time picked AMD with Lisa Su. So that is some nice media coverage on Palantir here today. The All-In podcast also mentioned them as well over the weekend. 82.14 on Palantir, fourth day in a row, closing above 80. Robinhood, $40.38, up 2.02% on the day. Nice mover today. Good close above $40. Hopefully we can stay and continue to gain momentum in that $40 range, but not bad for Robinhood. Joby right here up 10.65%. Archer up 4.86%. App 11 was up 1.2%. We had Kava that was down a little bit on the day. Zillow 73 on the day. They are also slightly red. Kohler, big day for them with their Bitcoin treasury strategy. They were up 39%, $4.78 on Kohler. You had Grindr. $18.20. I mean, dude, this has been the easiest stock to buy and hold all year. Like just up a casual 30% in like 2 months. And I barely check this position, never have to worry about it. So there you go. Grinder up 2.71%. Bought in at 14, now 18.20. First $18 close on Grinder as well, which is not too bad on the day. GameStop right here, 5.9%. Nvidia traded slightly down, 139.93. Redware again, Rocket Lab competitor, that's up 13.3%. SoundHound, great day as well, up 19% for SoundHound. Then you got CrowdStrike ending just flat on the day, and HIMS up 1.24% as well. Quantum stocks are running on what? I don't know. I have no clue. I legitimately have no idea why quantum stocks are running today. I mean, I know why they've been running over the past couple of weeks, but today particularly, I have no idea why they ran, but they ran. And potentially could have just been a lot more people piling in towards the end of the year. I think the quantum names are a little overextended. I'm not buying them. I don't know enough about the industry. I think a lot of it is hype right now. Some people may disagree. That is totally fine. But after I actually do some due diligence, I could have a better understanding of buying into the names. I don't really know what the thesis is right now to get into them. But if you got into them and you got in early, and if you got into IONQ at $9 and it's holding 40, then I don't see necessarily the biggest reason to sell. But you just got to make sure that you're in the right name when it comes to quantum, because there are a bunch of these names that are now popping up. Okay, money market funds. Let's check together. Money market funds. Here we go. Are you guys ready? We've got. Is it updated yet? No, it's not updated yet. All right, so it might up. I think it updates at 4:15. We're still looking at last week. We had 19 billion of a decrease in money market funds. That was December 19th. So we'll get the updated number today for December 26th. And we'll see if that continues to decrease. And if that's actually going to help more of the equity markets. Mario says, I have no idea what quantum even is, so I'll just stick with Google. Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's some things, dude, that it's just like, you don't need to be part of every industry. That's another thing I've learned. It's like, if the quantum names are running, it's like, okay, let them run. And whoever's making money in them, congrats. But you don't have to be in literally every single name just because it's running. In fact, the way to lose a lot of money is to chase these names just because just because it's going up. I think there's some legitimacy to some of the quantum names, but a lot of it I also think is just, people piling in because they want money and they're seeing it run up. So I think there will be names that survive. There will be other names that will get hit, but Google and Amazon are probably, Google in particular with Willow is an easy bet because, Google is probably not going anywhere, and you get some exposure to quantum with whatever the heck they do with Willow one day. Palantir right there, 82.14, down about 0.29% on the day. And Tesla as well closed a little bit lower right there at 454, down about 1.79% on the day as well. Now, here's something really interesting about Bitcoin that I found out today, or crypto in general. So on Friday, which is, I believe, tomorrow, this is when we're going to see this happen. Crypto gamma gravity is about to go away just as MicroStrategy launches the next round of buying on Friday. A record 43 billion of open interest, including 13.95 billion in Bitcoin options and 3.7 billion in Ether options, will expire on Deribit. Now, I didn't know what Deribit was. Apparently, that's a big crypto exchange. I didn't know that, but it's a crypto exchange. I'm sure some of you guys have known that because you've been in this for a while in the crypto space, but there's a decent amount of options that are expiring tomorrow on Bitcoin itself. I guess Deribit is one of those exchanges where you can buy options on the underlying assets, not just like the ETFs of them. And so that could be another reason we're going to see volatility tomorrow, and that we've been seeing volatility today. Again, we were holding 99,000 for a good 5 hours last night. And as soon as I woke up, I saw we were at like 95 and I was like, okay, so that momentum just kind of faded overnight. Part of the reason could be that we've got some options that are to expire, $43 billion worth of them, on one of the larger crypto exchanges. So, I mean, that's another thing to factor in when it comes to volatility. I do think MSTR, MicroStrategy, is going to be ready to start buying next week as we get into the new year. The question is going to be how much dilution is he going to pick for the buying. And again, the important thing is because he's asking shareholders to approve 10 billion shares extra as a shelf offering, and he has 46% of the vote, so it's going to be approved no matter what. They can do this forever. They just need to outpace the rate of dilution with the value of their Bitcoin yield against the rate of dilution. and they can keep winning. But that is going to be the ultimate question on if MSTR can do that going into next year. CrowdStrike right here, 365 as well, and then you got the S&P 601.3 ending the day just above 6,000 right here. Cool. So that's what we got in some of the broader moves of the market. I mean, what are your thoughts on Hood for 2025? I think it'll have a good year, but again, it's contingent on the market. I think Hood will have a pretty strong year as long as the market holds up. If the market does not hold up, Hood is attached to the market, and I think we're all expecting a 10 to 15% pullback across the market eventually. And when that happens, I think it'll create a really good opportunity for Hood. If that doesn't happen and we just continue gaining more excitement and momentum, then maybe we further see upside on Hood from these levels. Let's listen to Ryan Detrick and get his thoughts on where the markets are going and where this year is ending out. He's been pretty bullish throughout the entire year. Let's get his thoughts, and then we'll keep going from there.
Off with you. You're a big believer in the Santa Claus rally. According to you, we had that strong day on Christmas Eve, up over 1%. The historical data shows since 1969, that means we're in for a gain during the rally of 3%. Today was a little bit wobbly, though. In your mind, did you see anything that shook your confidence that we're going to see that Santa Claus rally pull through?
Yeah, Frank, thanks for having me back, and hopefully everyone's having nice holidays, and here's to a good new year. So listen, as everyone has talked about, Santa Claus is here. It's that time. We're up over 1% on Tuesday, and I took a look. Like you said, we tend to see actually better returns the rest of Santa Claus when you have a good first day. But getting more specific, kind of like Jonathan Krinsky just talked about there, look what happened today. All right, small caps up over 1%. I get it. Sometimes small caps are a dirty word, but we are seeing more participation. We are seeing things broaden out a little bit. If you ask me, we can look at small and mid-cap participation. So I like that. And again, let's just think about this. This is one of the most seasonally bullish periods of the year. We came into it extremely oversold. Number of stocks over the 200-day moving average, number of stocks over the 10-day moving average, very, very oversold. Where I'd be worried is if we actually sold off, right? When do market crashes happen? When you're oversold, not overbought. We're not doing that. I'll be very clear. We're not doing that flat on the day for the S&P. I get it. But I guess put a bow on this. We're encouraged by the action so far. And if you have a bounce during this seasonally bullish time period, it's really, not a big signal either way. It's when Santa doesn't come to town, and we're not seeing that so far.
All right, Ray, I'm going to have to push back on that small cap theory in just a second. But before we get to that,
Sure.
Vicky, I want to come over to you. Happy holidays to you as well. We've been looking at the action on the 10-year. It's pulled back a bit from the highs that we saw earlier today, but
Worse, if the Fed cuts 100 basis points.
For the Fed, you say that you believe there will still be 2 cuts next year. You don't think it's going to be a no cut or even hike scenario, but does it even matter if market rates are, in such a disconnect territory from what's going on with the Fed?
That's a good question. Because listen, why are rates higher? I mean, is it because inflation's really that much higher? When you look at the CPI and some of the data we saw, we'd say no. It's because the economy's still strong. So, what's really worse? If the Fed cuts 100 basis points next year because the economy is slowing, or because the economy is pretty solid? Of course, we would argue we'd prefer the economy to be solid. But adding to what we just talked about there, yields higher above 10% on the 10-year, yeah, that might be something upset the apple cart. But the U.S. dollar is that big one, right? If you continue to see strength in the dollar, look what's going on in Germany, look what's going on in France, look what's going on in China. There are some disappointing things happening, right? If the dollar continues to strengthen, that's one of our, I'd say, top 3 worries next year, because when the dollar is really strong, everybody, that's when things don't do that well. Look at the first 10 months of 22 for a reminder of that. But we're optimistic that the dollar will start to roll over, that yield will start to roll over. Is the realization, again, that if you look at inflation, I know we can talk about it all day, keep it real simple. You look at inflation, why is it higher? It's because of shelter and auto insurance. I mean, those are the 2 main reasons we're having excess inflation on the CPI. So we're optimistic inflation is not a problem, and there will be more cuts coming next year than we think right now.
Vicky.
Now, he's right on this. This dollar is trading at levels that I have not seen in a very long time for USD. And it's continuing to trade at pretty high levels. I mean, if we look at it, year to date, dollar's up 6%. Over the past 5 years, it's up 10.85%. And he's right about 2022. The dollar at one point got to 112 in September of 2022, and that was basically the bottom. October was the bottom, so around that time, at basically where we are right now, 108 to 112 was when we put in a market low and the dollar started to weaken, which is then bullish for equities. I do think he's right. I don't think we can have this strong of a dollar for the foreseeable future, and I think Trump's going to want to make sure the dollar is not this strong as well. That is also going to be a massive tailwind for international equities. Grab, Mercado Libre, etc., Nubank, all these guys have been hit with headwinds of foreign exchange they should be hit with some tailwinds as the dollar decreases and their currencies tend to go a little higher. So that is one thing that we definitely have to look at. Another thing that's been really annoying to markets this year, and I was reading a decent amount of articles this morning after the market open of how people were thinking about the 10-year. People do not like this 10-year at 4.6. And you've got, I wouldn't say bears, but just in general, people coming out saying that this is not sustainable to have a 10-year at over 4.5% and have the S&P closing at up 30% on the year. And I kind of agree and I kind of disagree. I kind of think this could become the new normal. It's not insane to have a 10-year here at 4.6, just based on the idea that I don't think the 10-year is going to like 6 or 7%. That I think would be like completely irrational, but 4.6 I don't think is insane. However, I do think, based on what Detrick just said, that shelter and automotive is the sort of like 80% of CPI that continues to keep inflation going up. When that goes away, that's when I think the market will have enough, I guess, credibility to not sell off bonds and cause those yields to go higher. Once that credibility is in place, just by like some basic understandings of inflation actually going down outside of rate cuts, because right now the market's at the 10-year saying that they don't really care about the Fed's rate cuts, that will cause mortgage rates to come down. Mortgage rates, by the way, came in higher this week than they did last week again. So mortgage rates continue to climb to that 7% range or above 7%. And that'll stimulate the housing market. And that obviously will make equities more attractive than bonds if you're yielding at 4% or 3.9% versus at 4.5%. Shelter is tough to get down. That's correct. And that's why it might take some time. That's why it might take some time. So again, the 10-year bond, that is an agreement to purchase the government's debt, and the government pays you a yield on that debt. The government wants to pay a smaller yield, but the market sometimes forces the government to pay a higher yield based on market dynamics. And if that 10-year, buyers and sellers do not come to an agreement that should be substantially lower based on the expectation of inflation, because again, if you believe inflation is going to be around, you want to get an elevated return above inflation, which is why the 10-year is basically double the headline inflation rate right now, or a little bit under double, but about 80% higher, then you're not going to buy equities, right? Or at least the bond market is not going to dabble into equities until that 10-year comes down. Also, that 10-year's got to come down for TLT to get some love. So again, TLT goes up when rates come down, particularly when yields come down, and rates have come down. TLT has only continued to go down because yields have not come down. And so if you look at TLT from 2021, this thing was at 159 in 2020. That's when rates went to zero. That's when like the COVID was just starting, and there was no interest to make anywhere because governments wanted to, Trump wanted to stimulate everything because we were having a pandemic. So that's when TLT was at its highest. And now people are betting on TLT to hopefully have bottomed around this 78 to 85 range. That should take TLT probably to 120 by the end of the year if rates come down substantially enough to get yields down. But until that happens, it's kind of a wait and game see with who wants to be in bonds and who wants to be in markets. And I think that is also going to be another big theme of 2025. Oh boy, we got the money market fund update. I just did the refresh. There's no element of surprise because Zozo Trader already put it in the chat. Thank you, Zozo Trader. You ruined the surprise, but nonetheless, that's okay because I don't know how to make sense of this. 54 billion increase in money market funds. Dude, the most bipolar, irrational thing outside of the 10-year is these damn money market funds. Last week, they decreased by 19 billion. Now they increased by 54 billion. So here's my raw take on this. My raw take is people sold stocks from December 19th to December 26th. People took profits. And we obviously saw that with the December 20th volatility when everything bottomed at like 5 a.m. in the morning. However, the people that took their profits and piled into money market funds, there was more money that came out from somewhere and bought that dip because we are not at those levels at all across any of these names from that December 20th bottom that we put in the pre-markets. Buffett's moving, maybe it's Buffett moving money around, it's something, but that is a substantial increase, dude. 54 billion. This is all-time high now on money markets at 6.8 trillion right before the end of the year. I think that's the answer. I think people sold, they took profits, they moved into money market funds towards the end of the year, especially when Jay Powell spoke. They got scared. They wanted to protect what they could, but enough people came in to buy those dips. And that's why you saw markets kind of recover towards the end of last week. Retail has 2.692 trillion, and institutions have 4.078 trillion in money market funds as of today. So there you go. Foreign buyers, yeah, might be foreign buyers as well coming in. I mean, that probably explains some of the moves that we saw on Friday, because it was a pretty sharp move. You got a lot of foreign money sitting on the sidelines as well that has been waiting to come into the markets because they just couldn't find the right entry point, because markets were just up a lot this year. And maybe on 12.20 they came in. I mean, look, there were some good deals. Hood was at 34. Sofi was at 14. Palantir was at, what was Palantir? $70.27, which, I mean, it is what it is, right? It was a deal in the short term. It was at, $70.25. So $70.27. So we had that on Palantir. Nvidia was at 126.34. I mean, there were deals if you compare it to where these stocks are right now, and some of those big buyers potentially came in. Even Tesla was at 410. I mean, now it's 450. Potentially could have been foreign money coming in as well. Dan Ives will be on CNBC Overtime. Let's see if he's there right now. We'll get a check on him. We'll get his thoughts on his Apple 5 upgrade. Yeah, he's not there. Oh no, he was there. Okay, here we go. Let's get it. Let's get a listen from Dan, see what he thinks about tech going into 2025 and his Apple upgrade as well.
Raised it from a couple days ago. You put out a note on Monday and you've raised it since then. What have you seen? What channel checks have you seen? They're going to make you raise your price target just within a few days.
Yeah, I mean, checks last 48 hours are showing, I think, strength from a holiday season perspective. It's our view this is going to be a record year. 240 million iPhones, I believe they ultimately sell. And what's wild, this is just the beginning of an AI-driven super cycle that's multi-year. And that's why, look, haters continue to hate on Apple, but I believe $4 trillion is just a start in terms of where we see, because the consumer AI revolution will go through Cook and Cupertino.
When you look at multiples for this one, though, Dan, I mean, 37 times last 12-month earnings, about 30 times forward earnings, depending on the estimates. You've got overhang in China. You've got a lower, uptake in terms of people who were buying new iPhones for this AI supercycle that you mentioned. Do you feel at all that the price could be a little fully valued at these levels?
Yeah, look, and I think that's really been the argument, I'd say almost like the last, call it, 2-3 months. But where I disagree is you got some of the parts. I believe the services business alone is worth $2 trillion. And I think the AI story, because as AI revenue starts to come through over the next few years, that could be an incremental $5-10 billion annually for Apple. And then you put all together, this is one where I think the best way to view this is what growth is going to be on iPhones. I believe 5-6% is way conservative. We're looking at high single digit, double digit. The renaissance of growth is now happening in Apple, and that's why I think this is just the start for what's going to be a golden year for Cupertino.
Have you looked at all at the interplay between the upgrade cycle and inflation? And I ask that because as consumers are grappling with higher cost of, things like food and shelter and autos and so forth, do they tend to kind of pare back on upgrades if their phone is working just fine, regardless of the technology that's out there? Do we need to see a real pullback in inflation before we get this upgrade cycle that everybody has been kind of banking on here?
Yeah, I think maybe on the edges that's been an issue for upgrades, but the big thing here is 300 million of 1.5 billion iPhones are in window of an upgrade opportunity, have not upgraded in 4+ years. And you look at the carrier discounts that we're seeing, they are significant. But again, the biggest thing is it's about Apple Intelligence. It's just starting with 18.2. Now as this all rolls out, hundreds of apps that are going to be on Apple. And I think that's why the consumer AI revolution, I still believe the stock is not reflecting what's truly going to be what could be an incremental $40-50 per share for AI.
So Dan, you came out with your note. Your estimates are about 300 million iPhones that have been upgraded in 4 years. You believe in this current fiscal year, this year, 240 of them are going to be upgraded. But I've asked this before. Why? Why are we upgrading for Apple Intelligence? We look at AI PCs. We have not seen the same adoption. I look at HP that talked a lot about AI PCs flat year over year, according to last shipments. I look at Dell. They talked a lot about AI PCs actually down 4% year over year. What makes iPhones and phones different than laptops if we don't really want AI laptops?
Well, I think the biggest thing, too, is that if you look at phones, I mean, Typical upgrade cycle is called every 2.5, 3 years. Now it's 4. So you're starting to get to a point where there's pent-up demand there. But I believe, to your point, this is going to be an upgrade cycle across the whole ecosystem, from iPads to Macs to iPhones, that ultimately they will drive. But it will ultimately be AI driven. That's why it's the start of what's really going to be a 2-year AI driven super cycle that plays out. And I think, Frank, to your point, the one thing that I think is underestimated is just the install base here and the monetization. It's only 15% penetrated. That goes to 25, 30% penetration. We're not talking about 4 trillion, 12 to 18 months from now, 5 trillion.
The always bullish Dan Ives. Dan, we're going to see you in just a bit to discuss Palantir. Thank you very much.
You.
All right, coming up.
Dan thinks Apple's going to 5 trillion. I mean, maybe it does. Who knows? Who knows? Maybe it does get there. I'm not the biggest fan of buying Apple at these levels, but it's probably going to go up given those index funds and passive ETF flows are coming in. And look, I mean, if Dan is right that we have an upgrade cycle that we haven't seen in over 5 years, so 250 million phones get upgraded, I'm a bit skeptical that we're going to have that massive of an upgrade cycle. If we do, then he's probably right. The street's going to give it a healthy multiple. Question is if we get that upgrade cycle. All right, let's hear from him on Palantir now as well.
Having a massive run this year. That stock's up.
Oh, they're going to come back. Okay, so they're not there yet. We'll hear from Dan in a second on Palantir. But yeah, look, Apple, one of those names that will continue to do well. Apple is $5 away, by the way, from getting to 4 trillion. So I think it's inevitable we're going to see 4 trillion. It did hit 260 today. 264 is that magic number for 4 trillion. 264. And we will be looking at Apple at 4 trillion. The question's going to be by the end of January, are we all going to be like, dude, Apple at 4 trillion, that was crazy? Or are we going to be like, dude, Apple at 4 trillion, that was a steal. It's now at 4.1 trillion. Like, I think that's going to be the question of 2025, or at least the first half of 2025. Apple struggled a lot in the beginning of 2024. It was at 160 until it was at 175 until WWDC, and then it gapped up to 190, then got to 200, and then never looked back after it got to 200. And it makes sense. It's a bull market. Apple would be participating in that. Tesla ended up participating towards the end of the year as well. But all of these names have had a pretty incredible run. Rumble as well, another 28% on the day. Rumble got to 1738. Now it's 1643 after hours, but Rumble not a bad day. Palantir right here, 8214, down about 0.3% on the day. Just Paul says, one thing we have to keep in mind is that Apple can make a strategic acquisition immediately, which could stimulate growth. Yes, Apple just historically has not really bought companies that are super strategic. The last major acquisition they did was Beats by Dre for $3 billion. And I don't know, that wasn't, I mean, that was a good deal, but because, you know, Beats are still headphones that people buy, but I don't know how significant of a deal it was. I'm looking for Apple to like really, I mean, Steve's idea has always been they should buy Warner Brothers Media, WBD. Now there's a lot of debt that comes with this thing, so they're probably never going to do it. But if they bought WBD and, or Steve also, what he wants them to do is buy Madison Square Garden, just like buy the whole company, Madison Square Garden Entertainment, and then incorporate like the Vision Pro with all the different entertainment. I hook it up with Apple TV, like something that's super external from a media perspective. The big question is, could they buy Netflix? They're probably not going to buy Netflix. It's too much money at this point. Netflix is, you know, its own animal. They're probably not going to sell to Apple. But there was a time 5 years ago where Netflix might have been interested. And it looks like that's probably not going to happen. Apple should buy Teladoc or Peloton. Well, actually, speaking of Peloton, there was someone today who made a little bit of an argument for why Peloton might be one of those names that we have to look at next year. So let's hear a little bit about that for a second. And then we'll go to Dan on Palantir.
Leading the charge in the past week and set to close out another year with double-digit. You there?
Yeah, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah from the 51st state.
Okay. Oh, you're in Canada? Where are you? Just kidding.
Yeah.
Eric, you are actually. So let's talk about the names, because you have a very high risk tolerance. You always go for names that make people maybe a little squeamish. I know you got Carvana when times were tough. That turned out to be a really good bet. And now you're looking at Peloton. How long have you been in this one, and why do you think it's promising?
Yeah, a couple of months now, Sarah. I mean, this is a name that, like Carvana, dropped something like 95% from its all-time highs post-COVID. And this is a name that has been forgotten about, but it's got a bunch of loyal subscribers that are not going to cancel, that are high margin revenue, and they are in the midst of a turnaround. They have a new CEO starting next week, actually. There is more fat to cut at Peloton in terms of admin and marketing costs. And so I'd say it's sort of me and David Einhorn who really like the stock. Everyone else has kind of forgotten about it. But this is a stock that has potential to triple in 2025. And I think these are the kinds of names you want to look at going into 2025.
So Peloton is up 76% this year. It's funny because my acquisition target for Apple has always been Peloton. I've been saying this for like a year and a half. I was like, they should buy Peloton because Peloton's, what's their market cap? Yeah, it's 3.9 billion. They were at $1 billion in January. Even if Apple paid $5 billion, which would have been a ridiculous premium, they probably would have maybe paid max $3.5 billion. I didn't think this was the worst product line to get into. But now, who knows? Maybe Peloton gets back to finding different ways to grow, and that leads them to be afloat as a public company. All right, so we got a panel on Palantir by Dan Ives and someone who's a former Palantir employee. So let's take a look at this, and then we'll keep going from there.
For the year, take a look at this chart, up more than 300%. But the question is, can those gains continue into the new year? Joining us now are Alex Fishman. He's the founder of Empros Capital. He's also a former Palantir employee and an investor, and also Dan Ives from Wedbush. He joins us once again. Gentlemen, great to have you both here. Alex, I'm going to start off with you. We're looking at this tremendous growth when it comes to the stock price for Palantir, an even bigger acceleration after their most recent earnings. Can this trend continue? You work there, you know the business very well, you know Dr. Karp very well as well. How do you see the outlook for this company despite this big run-up?
Thanks so much for having me on, Frank. You know, when I look at Palantir, one of the only companies that I see where it's easy to imagine it being 10 or 20 times the current size. You know, it's just hard to see how many of the enterprises out there on the world today aren't going to end up with a product that looks nearly identical to Palantir.
So, Dan, going to come back over to you. You're nodding, and you're always bullish, but I'm gonna have to call one thing out here. You have a price target for Palantir of $75. That's below where the stock's trading. It's higher than the street. The street's at about 45, but you don't seem to see an upside for this stock past where it is.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, like our bull case is 100, but I mean, as we've talked about with Palantir, they hated as a teenager to start the year, despise as a senior citizen, right, to end the year. And Frank, I believe this could be, when you say who could be the next Oracle over the next, call it 5-10 years, I think it's Palantir. When I think about the AI revolution, the reason they're the Messi of AI is that this is just the beginning of where I believe Palantir is heading. And as they continue to execute, you could start to justify a stock that goes much higher. And I think to me, that's why it's a get out the popcorn excitement going into 2025 for Karp and Palantir.
What does that mean? 100 is your bull case versus your
base
price
case,
target.
Yeah. I mean, the way that we've done Palantir, we view it as base case, bull case. And ultimately, as they execute, then ultimately you could raise the price target as they actually show the numbers. I think with Palantir, you got to show it as a sort of range, base and bull case.
Because it's high beta?
Because it's high beta.
But should investors be adding to their position at these levels if you believe the bull case is 100, or should they be pausing given with stocks?
It's a great question. I mean, we believe this is just continues to be a table pounder because of my view where AI heads. Because if you think about it, and Alex is, who knows AI extremely well, I think if you actually see where this heads with AIP, this is a stock that could be multiples of where it is today, which has been our call the whole year, is that this is a name, it's a table pounder, and I think it continues to, sort of justify its valuation.
So one of the things that's moved Palantir higher is it's moving to the commercial business, working with private companies. Alex, I want to come back over to you, though. When we look at this consortium to get into defense, when we're talking about Palantir, SpaceX, OpenAI, and Anduril, how do you view that? Do you believe these companies, Palantir already has a good defense business, but do these companies, what do they represent in this new quote-unquote world of defense as we go forward in 2025 in your mind?
Well, I think it's an absolutely enormous opportunity. And in many respects, this is the way that we as America will get the very best and brightest technical minds working on products that can be deployed broadly to help defeat our adversaries. And for Palantir, that means being the glue, means tying it all together, means coordinating all these things. Of course, for SpaceX, it means projecting dominance through space. And for Anduril, of course, dominance in the drone arena. And for OpenAI, it means bringing the best AI models to bear.
Alex, you have a good vantage point of the startup ecosystem right now. And as we look ahead to 2025, I'm curious what your expectations are for the IPO window. As you talk to startups, as you talk to founders, what is it that is historically, at least over the last few years, been keeping them on the sidelines? And do you think that changes next year, particularly as it pertains to some of these native AI companies that the buy side's really been waiting on for a while?
I think the very best companies, and we've seen this historically, they don't need to go public. And that's what drove the direct listings of the past. And I think it's what's going to drive the best listings of the future. And if you look at the very largest, very, very best technology companies today, they'll go public on their terms. And they may even essentially be underwriting their IPOs because they'll be so profitable and making so much money before they list.
So, Alex, I have a question for you. I want to get an answer from Dan as well. The last thing you just said there about them basically underwriting their IPOs, they're also buying some of their own shares on the private market. How does that change the IPO outlook and also their willingness to partner with other big tech companies in the public space or take investments from them?
Yeah, I think it changes the dynamic and it makes you really want to get in before these things are public because, we've never seen private companies at a scale where they're big enough to buy back their own stock. These companies have a very special vantage point as it pertains to their own business. And being private means that there's very few other people that have any information at all. And so the fact that these guys are looking at their stock and saying, well, this represents a very attractive investment relative to everything else I can do with my cash, I think that's very special and extremely bullish for these companies as we go forward.
Yeah, and he makes a great point, but I also want to say the strategics right now, they're looking at this landscape getting ready because with Khan done at the FTC, M&A is going to accelerate massively in terms of strategics. You're going to see the strong get stronger, and I think that's another. Some of these will go through an IPO, others M&A, and that's why I think with Khan done at the FTC, this is really right now a clean slate for big tech to just get bigger in this still 10 p.m. in this AI party that goes to 4 a.m.
You say that every time.
But it
laugh.
speaks to where we are in the AI revolution.
The always bullish Dan Ives, Alex Fishman. Great to have you both here. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having us, Frank.
All right, there you go. A lot of bullishness on Palantir from a former employee and from Dan Ives. Look, I agree with a lot of what they're saying. At the end of the day, the one argument that Alex Fishman had, which is the same thing Karp has, which is this idea that the company could be 10x bigger than what it is right now, that rests on this idea of, do you think every enterprise in the world, government or commercial, will need something like Palantir? And honestly, it's not a crazy thesis. Like, if the answer to that is yes, which I think everyone can objectively agree they're going to need some type of platform like Palantir, even if it's not Palantir, then that just means Palantir is TAM. And I know we're using TAM to kind of scale back how we analyze this, but it is true. It's like that TAM is gigantic. And Karp even said 2 years ago that TAM is north of $900 billion, which means Palantir just has to capture a small percentage of that to be able to justify the growth levels that the street wants to see. Again, got to get into that 35-40% growth this year. I think there is a good shot it happens. And if that's the case, we could be much higher from here, or we could have a little bit of a pullback before we make the next leg up. But it really depends on their growth going into Q4. NVIDIA right here, 139.93. Not too much of a move after hours. Bitcoin still above 95,000. Tesla down a little bit after hours. Where's Hood on a green day? Hood is green after hours as well. $40.41 on Robinhood. Also, we have our boy, I can finally say it now because it's public, Crossroads, coming out with an interview with Mr. Vlad Tenev. So here's a 1-minute clip of Mr. Crossroads asking Vlad about Canada. I know a lot of you guys have been waiting on this one. Here's what Vlad had to say, and the full interview will be coming out tomorrow at 12 p.m.
Followers that ask me all the time, like, when Canada? And I'm like, it doesn't seem like it's atop the radar. It doesn't have that regional hub. There's regulation stuff, but
well, I will tell you, Canada. There's a lot of people that get really excited about Canada at Robinhood. We have Canadian employees. Yeah. We have a Canadian office in Toronto. So, certainly in some cases we have different criteria, and the fact that we have employees there and we have a lot of like diehard Robin Hoodies that can't use the product is unfortunate. So
they're missing out, but one day they're part of every country, so one day they'll have it. So
exactly.
So I think Vlad's being politically correct there. I don't think you Canadians are getting Robinhood for a very long time. It's not happening until your governments in the different provinces get rid of some of these regulations. Robinhood's not going to be able to get a different brokerage license per province just to operate in the country. Like, there's just no way they're going to go through all that work. So I think Vlad's trying to be nice there, but Canada Robinhood is not coming, in my opinion, for a very long time. I think they're focused on other markets that are just easier to penetrate into. Singapore hopefully comes in 2025. They didn't give us a timeline. They did say that's their next target. If it was Canada, they would have said Canada. They didn't. They have the UK, which they really haven't marketed in. So I hope that changes next year as options come into Robinhood's product. They already have margin and lending. Now they just need to have options, and then ISAs or ISAs, however you say it. And then we need Singapore. We need Southeast Asia penetration. And then maybe in a couple of years, Robinhood's big enough to take on Canada. But right now, I don't think that's going to happen. We could make them the 51st state, though, as Trump keeps joking about. If they were the 51st state, it'd be very easy to get some Robinhood in Canada. But unfortunately, they are not. I think America would welcome in Canada as the 51st state. I think Americans would be very happy about it. I think Canadians would never want to be the 51st state. There's some of you guys that probably would love to be Americans, but I think the far majority of Canadians would not want to be underneath the American regime of what do you call it? Democracy and guns and liberty and freedoms and all that stuff that we offer. So yeah, I don't think the Canadians would love that. But it's funny because Trump is like legit arguing. Trump also said the other day, like, we should buy Greenland. And then he got mad that the Greenland prime minister was like, no, you can't buy us. And Trump was like, well, they should have been nicer with how they rejected. And I was like, what? What is he saying right here? But that's what you get in Trump. Yeah, there's just a bunch of posts of him saying we should buy Greenland. I'm like, all right, I don't know if that's going to happen. But I don't think we're going to get Canada. I don't think that's going to happen. Could they set up in major provinces to start, like Toronto and Montreal? I don't think so, dude. I don't think it's like them going to one state in America and saying they can operate in one state. I think they have to set up for the entire country. And Canada's just different about it. Canada is totally different about it. Also, that's the other thing. Gene brings up a good point. If we did make Canada the 51st state, there would not be universal healthcare like there is in Canada. Canada has a very sophisticated healthcare system that is outside of the private healthcare system that the United States has. So that in and of itself would probably get people to not want to be Americans, because one thing Canadians and people in the UK enjoy is that at least they have a healthcare system that they know they don't really have to pay for the same way the United States has to deal with. So I think that in and of itself would stop Canadians from allowing. But this conversation is ridiculous because Canada's not going to be the 51st state. It's like, that's just not happening. It'd be crazy if it did happen, but that's not happening. But yeah, I don't think Hood's coming to Canada anytime soon. I think it's going to take some time before that plays out. Every Canadian I spoke to hate their healthcare system. Yeah, I mean, look, there's definitely probably Canadians that don't enjoy parts of it. Same thing with people in the UK that think it's inefficient. But I think the far majority of people are happy that they have universal healthcare. And it would be totally different if you come to the United States and you have to figure out how you do healthcare. It's a different world, different vibe, different sort of paradigm on how people think about healthcare. And I don't think that's going to be changing overnight in the United States. Capitalism is too entrenched in America, I think, for us to ever have universal healthcare. I think there's a shot America could have universal healthcare, but I don't know, dude. Because you would need the AOCs or the Bernies of the world to really make it happen. And Obama tried with the Affordable Care Act. I know that's not universal healthcare, but it's as close to universal healthcare as I think the United States is ever going to get to. And even he barely got it passed. So JD Vance is not going to do universal healthcare if he's next up after Trump. And unless AOC wins, I don't know how we're going to campaign the country around that. So I don't think it's ever happening in America, which is probably another reason why a lot of people would not want to move here. To live into the USA, you have to be tough. Yes, that is also true. Obamacare was based on Mitt Romney's plan. Yeah, I mean, the Obamacare also, it wasn't as socialist as people thought it was. There were elements of it that were definitely progressive, but there were also elements of it that were pretty basic and pretty normal. And he had to get Republicans to vote on it as well. He had to get 2/3 of Congress to actually get that to be a thing. Someone said right here, we have to wait 10 hours just to get into an emergency room in Canada. Yeah, I mean, look, that's the ever-going debate around healthcare, right? It's like, do you want crappy service but free, or good service but expensive? And the bottom line, or in the middle line, is usually never there, and you got to kind of just take whatever you get. But if you've been in a country where it's free, I think going to paid is like something most people won't do. And if you've been in a country where it's paid and then you go to something free but it's crappy service, that might be something you're not able to do either. So it is going to be a lot of, I would argue, pontification from both countries on how they navigate healthcare long term. Here's Cameron Dawson. Let's hear from her as well on what she thinks is going to happen in 2025 and where we see markets going early in January.
It certainly should be, given the fact that stocks are trading at 22.3 times forward earnings. But we're not certain if the 10-year can continue this momentum higher, simply because it's diverging from economic surprises so much. So economic data has been coming in a little bit weaker than expected, like those continuing claims, but 10-year treasury yields keep pressing higher. Eventually, that gap will close, meaning that either data has to come in better to support these higher yields, or yields will fall. So maybe stocks can get a little bit of a breather as we get into 2025 if yields start to turn lower.
Young Yu, do you subscribe to the seasonal stuff? We are in the middle of this Santa Claus rally. Again, we're a little bit higher today, I guess higher since Tuesday. Final 5 trading days of the year plus 2 into the new year, which will tell us, I guess, the whole fate of the rest of the year. Is that true? Next year.
Thanks, Derek. Great to be here. I do think there's some reality behind some of the seasonal tendencies that play out, but it's important to remember these are just tendencies. These are not deterministic. If you take a multi-year, looking back decades, you can see some changes in the averages over certain periods, certain months, surrounding certain holidays. But you really don't want to hang your hat on that. You really want to look at what are the catalysts at any given time? What are the dynamics that are taking place in the market? And we think there's more likely to be a bit of a dose of caution running up into the inauguration. So we don't think there's a major reason for a significant pullback here, but we don't see the catalyst playing out for a few more weeks still.
So pretty much every analyst is coming up with this argument that is like, yeah, January is going to be a snapback trade. We're going to pull back. We're going to have taxes or selling, which is going to, people are waiting until January to sell for taxes. New administration, Trump getting sworn in, there's going to be some hesitancy, and that should create a dip going into January. Pretty much every analyst that I've seen come on CNBC is talking about a January dip that you should buy, which means maybe we get the dip, maybe we don't, but that is kind of a universal thesis now that a lot of people are coming up with, which is that January should be bad. If January is not bad and we're green and we keep chugging along the bull market, I mean, it's going to be a pretty weird spot to be in because everyone's looking for that pullback to get into. And we had a little bit of the pullback last week, down 3%. And I mean, we did have people end up buying the dip, even if people sold. But January is going to be very interesting to see if we actually get that pullback and if some of these names get a breather. And if they don't get a breather, if people just are willing to buy them at higher levels, then it's all based on earnings. And earnings just have to keep living up to as much of the expectations that the market already has. But don't they have to sell before January for taxes? No. So again, the reason people are waiting until January 1st or 2nd to sell is because in America, at least, the way it works is if you sell taxes on December 26th today, if you sell stocks on December 26th, you pay taxes in April of 2025 on the profits you made in 2024, even if it's only 5 days before 2024 ends. If you take profits in 2025, the first day of 2025, you don't have to pay taxes till April of 2026. That's 15 months of having time to collect money to pay your taxes. Which is why people think that a lot of people that have been sitting on gains are waiting until January 1st or 2nd to sell, which is a fair thesis. It's just, will that create the big dip that a lot of these analysts are looking for? I don't know. I mean, you're definitely going to get some selling pressure. It's just how bad is that selling pressure going to be, especially if you got new money coming in and is ready to buy in January. But that's what we're going to have to wait and see in terms of the results. Also, IWM, that's one name to watch out for in January. The January effect tends to be really good for small caps. So this is a sector that we should see some outperformance in January, just based on historical levels. But that'll be another 2025 theme and story going into the beginning of the year. But you still have to pay estimated taxes along the way for most people. Yeah, that's true. Especially if you have your own business, you still have to do it as well. It's just in terms of capital gains, you do have to wait. You do get a chance to wait a little bit more. Oh yeah, January 6th is Jensen's keynote. I forgot. CES is coming up in like a week and a half. So that'll be a big day for NVIDIA. Let's see if Jensen maybe announces something new at CES. That'll be something very important. We will be streaming that. We'll stream the inauguration as well. I think that's happening on... When is the inauguration? When is the inauguration? It's like the 20th, right? It's 20th, yeah. 20th, 12 p.m. We will see the inauguration. And then that's it. Then we're into a brand new administration for the next 4 years. And that'll be it. That'll be it for 2024. If the aliens don't take over, correct? If the aliens don't take over. I mean, what are your stock picks for 2025? So again, on the episode we'll do on Saturday, we'll have a much more in-depth answer on like expectations for 2025. That'll be 9 p.m. this Saturday. Stock awards on this channel. But, you know, just to throw some names out there, I like Hood next year. I like Shopify next year. I like Reddit next year, but Reddit needs to potentially come down a little bit, but I don't know if it has to. I like the Qs next year. I like Tesla, Amazon, Google, and NVIDIA next year out of the max, and Meta. I guess the only one I really don't like that much is Apple, to be honest, and Microsoft. Grab next year. I think Grab's going to do really well. I think there's a lot of names to watch. I think Rocket Lab's going to be one to look out for next year, even if they all take breathers. Chris, Steve, Matt, and I think we'll have another person on. Doug. Doug will be on. Chris, Steve, Matt, and Doug. Maybe Carlos. I might get Carlos to come on as well if he's free. So we should have a full house, and it should be a decent amount of people. So yeah, Sofi next year I think will be great. I mean, it'll be a stock pickers market next year. I actually think MicroStrategy won't be horrible next year. If Bitcoin holds up, MSTR probably goes higher. If Bitcoin doesn't, MSTR tanks, but that is contingent on Bitcoin. But I think it will be a stock pickers market next year. And a lot of it will be based on what names actually have momentum. Grinder, dude, maybe. Like I don't look at Grinder, dude. I really I don't look at it. And then I just casually, I was on Webull, I was getting ready for the show, and I'm like, wow, Grinder, 1820. It's like, well, that's great. So that name, yeah, if they can keep accelerating growth, I think they do well next year also. So a bunch of these names I think should have fun going into next year, even if they have a little bit of volatility to get there. SoundHound, again, don't know too much about the company, but it's up 20%. It's been a really good small cap pick. So SoundHound's been doing well. Broadcom as well. I think they've priced in a lot for Broadcom, but maybe for good reason. Broadcom right here at a $1.15 trillion market cap. If they can execute on earnings, they should do well. I think cybersecurity is not going anywhere. You need a lot of cybersecurity when it comes to AI. And this is why, you know, the sort of secular bull market Dan Ives is talking about, he's just being logical. And he's just like, all right, you're going to buy AI software. You're going to have to protect it with cybersecurity. You're going to have to build out CapEx. All of those names that are incorporated, whether it's a Salesforce, CrowdStrike, Palantir, Oracle, MongoDB, etc. All those names play a role. And those names should benefit from all of that that's happening as well. Doug says, that's why I like Hack. Yeah, that might be another ETF I buy next year as well. Hack, I like that one. Easier than buying an individual cybersecurity name. You kind of just buy the sector. And this is the one thing I think, again, the basic thesis on cybersecurity is any budget officer of a public company is going to think really hard before they decrease their budget for their cybersecurity spend. In fact, most of them will be thinking, how can we cut somewhere else to increase our budget for cybersecurity so that there is no shot we mess this up? Because in this day and age, like, trust is the only thing that consumers really pay and feed off of. And if you lose your trust with consumers because something happens and data gets breached, it can get really messy. So I think that's a quick thesis for just cybersecurity as a sector. Are you getting in on Archer? I'll probably sell puts on Archer. I'm not going to buy it at $11. I think Archer can do very well, but I think puts at 7 or 8 is not the worst idea on Archer. I still have to do more due diligence on it, but from what I've seen, I'm pretty damn impressed. And that Anduril partnership, I did not expect that. That was also very impressive. Oh, here's a list of companies that might IPO next year. So let's take a look at this list. Anduril's not on this list, I believe. Is it? No, it's not on this list. One of these names is already public, Rubrik, but these are the other names that could go public. So here's a question. If you had to pick one of these names to buy next year at an IPO, at IPO price, what would it be? Let me read them out. Only one. Wiz, Ramp, Databricks, CoreWeave, Stripe, Chime, Notion, Klarna, Sheen, Discord, Turo, Canva, Cerebras Systems, Revolt, Figma, Plaid, Epic Games, Impossible Foods, Rippling, Deal, Gusto, Snike, Grafana Labs, MNTN. Palantir actually just partnered with Grafana Labs. So that's another company working with Palantir in the FedStar government space. This is a hard one. There's actually really good names that I like. All of it has to do with valuation, though. Obviously, we're just kind of picking the name. We're not really looking at valuation. I'm seeing a lot of Discords. I'm seeing a couple Stripes. June wants Databricks. Klarna. I don't hate Klarna. But, oh, by the way, I got to show you guys something else. Speaking of Klarna, let me pull this up in a second. But if I had to pick one of these names just off their names alone, man, this is not easy. There's some good ones here. You know what I pick? Just because I think their numbers and valuation will be better than everyone else, I'm going to go Gusto. I'm going Gusto. Now, a lot of people don't know what Gusto is. Gusto is a payroll management platform. And pretty much anyone who starts a tech company, they contract with Gusto to be able to pay everyone that needs to get paid at an appropriate time. I've used Gusto before. I like Gusto. I've been paid by Gusto before on like summer jobs that I've had. I actually think their valuation, let's check their valuation, will be lower than a lot of these other premier names. Like Stripe at 90 billion is not going to be fun to pay that valuation. There's just like no world in which I think that's going to be fun. But Gusto's valuation might actually not be that crazy. Yeah, Gusto, 9.5 billion in May 2024. 2023, they generated 500 million in revenue. We don't have the 2024 revenue, but if that got to $1 billion and they're going to be IPOing at 9.5 billion, maybe 12 billion, that's not crazy. I think Gusto's going to have a pretty reasonable valuation. Discord's going to have a crazy valuation. Sheen's going to have a crazy valuation. Klarna will have a better valuation than the private markets, but still will be crazy. Notion, I don't know if they're really a public company. I don't know if Notion's like one of, I don't know. Notion, we got to go deeper into. Chime might not be horrible, but they're going to have a down round. Stripe's going to be overvalued. Databricks going to be overvalued. Canva's going to be ridiculously overvalued. Canva was valued at 40 billion in 2021. Even if they're valued at 25 billion, that's going to be expensive. Figma probably is not going to be that expensive, but they got a 20 billion acquisition offer. So I imagine they'll try to IPO at above 20 billion. And then the other ones, I just don't know too much about, but I think a lot of those names are going to be expensive. Epic Games looks interesting. That one is interesting. They're just tied up in some lawsuits, but that one should not be horrible. Canva will be good as well. I use that for some projects. Interesting. Adobe needs some competition. Canva is a great company. I use Canva today. I pay for Canva $13 a month every single month. I've paid for them for like 2 years. Melanie Perkins, amazing CEO. She's awesome. The problem is they raised at 40 billion in 2021. Canva's not a $40 billion company. Like they're just not doing those types of numbers, even though I love their product. So I wonder, what are they going to IPO at? 20 billion? Maybe it gets a little bit more interesting. Or is it going to be like 35 billion where it's not that interesting at that point? Gusto, I like. I think Gusto's probably going to be one of the more cheaper ones that IPOs. Databricks, I think people will probably do well on Databricks just because there's going to be a lot of hype around Databricks. I am curious about their growth rates. Right now they're saying they're growing at 60%, and I think they're going to try to justify probably $100 billion valuation. They just raised at 60. So they're going to try for that. And the comps against Palantir that are going to be put up pretty aggressively, them and Snowflake. So that's going to be one that's going to be compared to a lot of these names. But I think valuation is going to be important on a bunch of these. Vivek is launching a Bitcoin ETF. Yeah. So, okay. So we do have some news on Vivek as well. So Mr. Vivek Ramaswamy, the guy who's managing Doge, made some news today. Real quick, before I get to the Vivek news, 2 headlines. Number 1, buyback. Saw this chart today. 2024, companies have bought $947 billion back of their stock, which means it's not just about earnings growth in 2024. It was buybacks. So you talk about $1 trillion that came off the table from companies buying back their stock. That definitely helped elevate some of these equity valuations. And the number 2, speaking of buy now, pay later, take a look at what someone found on Robinhood's credit card app. Choose a plan to split up your purchase into monthly installments. It looks like the hood is getting into buy now, pay later, which is another evolution of their strategy of building good products, make them sticky, and then get people to use them. As you can see right here, Vlad commented low-key a couple days ago on someone saying that Robinhood's silently rolling out their buy now, pay later program. So it does seem like you've got further product velocity from Hood as they're going for a variety of different use cases when it comes to their credit card. Okay, so the Vivek news today. So Vivek Ramaswamy, his Strive asset management firm filed for a Bitcoin bond ETF. And my understanding of this is that they will pick companies that are doing the Bitcoin treasury strategy, and essentially they're going to just buy up a bunch of them. So I could be wrong on this, but I believe they're going to be buying MSTR, Riot, Marathon, Kohler, all the companies that do Bitcoin treasuries, and it's just going to be an ETF of those names. I have to read through the entire prospectus to get a better understanding of it. But also another thing they're planning to do is offer exposure to convertible bonds as well. So it's not just buying up names that are using the Bitcoin treasury strategy, but more importantly, buying up the convertible bonds that those names are offering. And then retail investors a lot of them have been saying, hey, how do we buy MicroStrategy's bonds? You can't do it if you're a retail investor. Maybe this ETF is a way you can get access to MSTR's convertible bonds if there's an ETF that actually holds them inside of the ETF itself, which is what Vivek looks like he's trying to do. So the reason why this is bullish for Bitcoin, A, is because there's just more activity, more money in the space. But B, I mean, Vivek is in a pretty influential spot when it comes to Doge. And you've got a lot of these people, not to mention David Sachs, the crypto czar, who's been bullish crypto for a long time, also pretty damn bullish on crypto. You have more of these products popping up. I mean, you got people in power that probably want to see them succeed, and they're going to try doing their best to get crypto to continue to be normalized in the United States. And a Bitcoin reserve is where that kind of starts out to become a big thing. But we need to make that happen early in 2025. Now, granted, this could also be the counter argument, which is, hey, this is getting a little too exciting if, retail investors have access to convertible notes in the Bitcoin treasury market. But I think it was inevitable. Eventually, it was probably going to happen. And if Vivek's doing it, if Vivek wasn't doing it, someone was going to do it. But it was probably inevitable that we were going to get some level of exposure to these convertible notes for retail. And it might just be happening through a Bitcoin bond ETF now. Any idea when Hood will be able to exercise cabinet trades? What do you mean by that, Chris? What do you mean by cabinet trades? I'm not sure exactly. So I just looked it up right here. A cabinet trade is used as the final nail in the coffin of what is more or less a useless option in order to help recoup a fraction of the losses and its lowest possible tradable price for the option. It should also be noted that cabinet trade cannot be used to initiate short or long positions. So I've never heard of a cabinet trade. So thank you for this comment. I'll research more about this today. This looks more like a more advanced option strategy, if I'm not wrong. I've never done a cabinet trade before for tax harvesting. Yeah, I don't know if Hood has this on their timeline to be able to execute on. But look, they gave us tax lots, and so they are listing to people that want a bunch. They gave us P&Ls, even though these are very basic things, I know. I would imagine they're hopefully going to get into a lot of these other things. The big thing I think other people want outside of tax lots and and some of these basic products from Hood is shorting, the ability to short. They haven't given us that yet. I don't know if they're going to give us that anytime soon. I think the problem with shorting, again, is that if you short, your losses can be infinite. And, you know, Robin has a lot of retail investors. I don't know if they want them to easily just get into shorting. I think that's one of those things you got to be a little bit cautious of. But I think eventually that'll be on the platform as well. And now that they're getting bigger accounts, they should be able to justify shorting more easily. I've never shorted a stock. I don't even think, honestly, I don't know the last stock I bought puts on, to be honest. I've usually more of a long only type of strategy. I haven't really, and again, that's been the right idea in 2024. I mean, unless you was a specific name like TMDX or something, buying puts has just not been the easiest way to win in 2024. Selling puts has been, but not buying them, unless you got the name really, really strong. Unless you were just right on the name. If not, going long was the better bet this year. I'm still waiting for tax lots. Do you know if Robinhood released tax lots feature to all? So I'm waiting for it as well. I don't have it yet either. So I think by the end of the year, so a couple days left, it should be rolled out to everyone. That's what they said. So they're probably rolling out to the last batch of people, but most people have it. I don't have it yet. But hopefully I should get that towards the end of the year. I don't even have the P&L statement feature yet either. And that's annoying because I want to be able to see the P&L. But if you message them, they'll send it to you. But I do think that'll be rolled out hopefully pretty soon, which is going to be good. Could you include the put selling strategy in the options overview in the new year? Yeah, we'll find a Saturday where I do the options overview. Probably will be like early in the morning, and we'll do an entire hour-long show on just like the basics of options. And we'll talk about put selling as well and option selling. Because I think the way I'm going to organize it is like, what are options? And then what does it mean to buy options? What does it mean to sell options? And we're not going to get super nitty gritty into the details of it. We're just going to sort of do it at a very high level and discuss the risks and rewards of buying versus selling options. Essentially, as Chris said a couple days ago on the show, it is insurance. You are buying or selling insurance. And when you find certain opportunities where insurance becomes really cheap, that insurance could be worth a lot more in the future, right? And I think that's where the benefits of options kind of come in. But you have a very thriving market that's willing to essentially use options as gambling. So the downsides of options also kind of have to be factored in when you look at overall returns. Explain it to us like how you explained it to your uncle. Yeah, dude, it was pretty simple, but he's a smart guy. I think you guys will catch on to it really quick. For those that are brand new to options, most of you guys should catch on really quick. I mean, I think my explanation was easy to understand, but it's not that complicated. It really isn't. It is complicated to understand unless you haven't run through hundreds of examples. But once you get an overview to it, and then you can literally just go to ChatGPT, be like, hey, ChatGPT, give me 5 different scenarios on selling puts. Make the first 2 go really bad, make the first 2 go really good, and make the last one be stuck in the middle. And just see what ChatGPT says. And then it's going to break it down, explain it, give you analysis. It's going to pick hypothetical stocks, show what it looks like if you are underwater on the option or if you're winning on the option. And I think using AI as an assistant when it comes to learning this stuff is actually really, really productive. But I should make it simple enough to understand, and everyone should get a good grasp of it going into next year. If you're following the channel, I want people to know what it means to sell an option or to buy an option. Like, I don't want anyone watching the show to be confused when we talk about that stuff, because it really isn't as complicated as people make it out to be. Probably mid-January, we're going to do it. Mid-January, one of those Saturdays in January. We'll do it then. Bayray says, if a Mick can understand it, anyone can. Trust me. Yes, exactly. If I can understand this shit, anyone can understand this. Steven says, I spent a couple hours yesterday researching covered calls based on your show. It was eye-opening. It is eye-opening, isn't it? It's like peeking into the 8th wonder of the world. It's like, holy crap, this is a thing. Dude, when my mom got it, like when she finally understood what option selling was, her first thing was like, why doesn't everyone in the world do this? And I'm like, because it takes some time to understand it. And most people just don't care enough about markets or about derivatives to like get a better grasp of what it looks like. Like, to me, it's exciting. It's just math. And it's not like calculus or linear algebra. It's like very basic math. And the math gets exciting when you can see the potential outcome of how you can win against the math, right? Or how you can make the math work on your side. And so you don't need to know too much about anything other than the company you're selling options on or buying options on and where you think the math lies in your favor. So when something's super sold off, like Robinhood was at 7 or 8, or when Palantir was at 7 or 8 and people bought options on that, the math was in your favor because the bottom was likely in. And when something is more aggressive and selling covered calls has not worked on Palantir, but in general, when something's more aggressive and you want to hedge to the downside a little bit, and when you want to make some money off the flatness of a stock, given you don't think it can run that much, or the downside, that's also where options get productive. So I think there's a lot of ways to be able to use and leverage it going into next year. But Immit's mom is a math teacher. That's true. I mean, look, it is all math. When she realized it's all math as well, I think she got pretty excited. I mean, the main thing that excited my parents was the idea that they could make additional income from the capital that they have in the market. And it becomes less of, oh, I'm going to buy and then I'm hoping 10 years the stock is up. And that's fine. That's how most people make money. But in the short term, to be able to actually collateralize your cash and or your equity, to be able to generate returns from it, it's not always going to work, and you have to be very careful in navigating it. But if you can pick the right companies and sort of navigate it effectively by hedging as much of the downside or just not being as greedy for wanting to get the best returns, but you get somewhat decent returns, that's still more money than what you could get by just sitting there and holding, which is not too bad. The amazing part about that is that your mom was willing to learn about options. Yeah, I mean, once you start making money off of it too, then you really want to learn. Like after that first option trade where you make a little bit of money, you're like, oh, let me learn a little bit more about this. Because like I feel like everyone in life wants to have a side business or a side income or a side strategy, a side thing as opposed to their main thing that they understand and that's able to create some type of passive income for them. And a lot of side strategies, you have to work really, really, really hard to build up for them to even generate $1,000 a monthly side income, which is not easy, right? You want to build up some e-commerce store or something, like you have to, whatever, you want to build a YouTube channel, but then you have to be super committed to it. Like it's hard. But with selling options, as long as you have a baseline of cash saved up, you can start tomorrow if you understand it. And I think that's the promise of this strategy for income over other additional revenue streams that are hard to build up to get. Zokul says this is the stuff that should be taught in high school. Really? Yes, dude. Like in high school, bro, if they taught you how to sell options, if they taught, instead of like teaching you derivatives and calculus, but teaching you derivatives applied to financial markets, like most of the calculus I learned was pointless. It just didn't matter. It didn't matter in the real world. And obviously, if you're going to be a mathematician or a computer scientist, or you're going to have a PhD in AI, you need to know a lot about math. The far majority of people are not going to be those types of individuals. And the counter argument is like, well, if we don't teach them, then they're never going to have a chance. I think that's BS. I think if you want to be a PhD in computer science, I mean, yeah, there is some motivation that comes from school, but you're probably going to go after it regardless, because you probably have external factors like how you're being raised at home or how you're naturally attracted to different fields of study over other fields of study. And you're going to go and kind of go from there and keep building on those strengths. The far majority of people are just not going to try to do something that is that complex and hard because by definition, most people don't want to do hard things. And computer science and heavy mathematics, that stuff is hard. And that stuff doesn't attract a lot of people. But if you teach people how to make money, which is what everyone cares about, using very basic elements of math, like financial derivatives, I think you get a lot of people that get excited and a lot of people that also are like, shit, let me actually try. Bay Ray says selling options legit takes like 30 minutes a week at most. LOL, best side hustle. Yeah, it's real. It's not that complicated. But granted, I want to say this with a nuance that it's been a bull market. So it's been a very good bull market. Even if you've been selling aggressive options, you've been able to probably win on a lot of those trades because everything has gone up. I think 2025, if that is stagnating and it's not like going up in a vertical line, then it's going to be a little harder to manage, but it still is possible. It's just you're going to have to measure your risk tolerance to not be super aggressive when it comes to generating premiums. Mate, what did you pay per contract for your Robinhood 2025 options? So the ones that I'm selling tomorrow, I paid 49 cents for, not tomorrow, on January 2nd. And I'm selling them for $3. So it's basically a 6X. So, yeah, those are cheap. I bought them when they were cheap. I bought them again when they were cheap in freaking what? In August 5th. I bought them again October 31st when Robinhood tanked after earnings. So, but that's an example of buying options when they're really cheap and then they move up. But for selling options, you don't need to buy anything or take on that much risk. You just need to be correct about where you think the price is going to go and then accordingly collateralize your risk versus your reward and then close the position when you think you've captured a decent amount of it. And that's it. That is it. Every AI algorithm is based on calculus and statistics. Without it, NVIDIA, Tesla, Palantir are nothing. Yes, like all the big tech companies are rooted in math. There's no argument there. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying most people in their life are not going to become statisticians or mathematicians. Like, here's my thing. If you're going to work at Palantir one day, you don't need the teacher to motivate you to be smart enough to work at Palantir. And I think our education system is like, oh, well, we need to motivate kids. It's like, no, like, so, yeah, we should motivate them, but a lot of them are just not going to be the next high-level engineer at Palantir or NVIDIA or Tesla. Like, it's just not going to happen. Out of the majority of people, it's a really hard thing to do. So for those people, can we teach them how to file their taxes? Can we teach them how to open up a solo 401k so they can save $70,000 a year on their taxes? Can we teach them about the stock market? Can we teach them about compound interest? Can we teach them about the basics of financial literacy if they're not going to be making $800,000 a year at NVIDIA? It's like, that seems like a good idea because most people are not going to be making 800 grand at NVIDIA because that's a very hard job. You've got to be incredibly talented and smart to be able to get those opportunities. But you can be the dumbest person in the world and make millions in the market. You don't need to be smart. You just don't. You do not need to be some super intellectual guru. You just need to have a basic understanding of what are markets, and then you need to be able to research stocks, which does take time. It's not like it's not going to take time, but anyone can research a stock. Now, having the discipline and the patience to learn about how to value a company, all that stuff, and then take appropriate risks, that stuff is definitely hard, but it's possible. And it's way more possible than a PhD in computer science that gets you a fancy role at NVIDIA. Like, it's just way more possible. But we don't act like it is, and that's why schools don't allocate resources to it, and then people don't get into the markets. Barry says, yes, let them learn so we can get exit liquidity. Barry's getting too cocky, bro. One good year in the market, he's getting too cocky. Admit you have the SoFi calls. Yes, I still have the SoFi calls. Whenever I sell them, I will let you guys know. I don't plan on selling them, dude. I think SoFi's going to 20. I think we're gonna do good on that trade. So if I sell them, I'll let you know. But I think we'll be good. I think we'll hold on to them for a while. That is sour because he couldn't get into NVIDIA. Dude, I'm sour since Stanford rejected me in 2016, bro. They accepted like 4,000 people. I was one of the 50,000 rejected. I was like, you know what, Stanford? Screw you guys. I'm never coming back. And then I proceeded to come back the next 5 years to their campus. The Stanford campus is beautiful, dude. Canton, it's a lot of hills, beautiful campus, a lot of hills, a lot of walking. But yeah, they rejected me. Josh says Palantir rejected me. That's okay. Palantir rejects a lot of people, just like Stanford. It's a hard place to get into. Doug says Palantir isn't going to hire you if you are well-rounded either. Alex has discussed this. He's looking for A+ people in one area who may suck at all other areas. Yeah, that's another thing. I mean, being well-rounded is not how you get into Palantir. Being like obsessed. I mean, even Ted, the global head of commercial, they hired someone on the spot the other day. He put out a tweet about this. Yeah, look at this. So he said right here, taking the initiative to learn the product and record over an hour of high quality training content is a good way to get our attention and a job at Palantir. Show, don't tell. Welcome aboard. Justin Lang fan. And then he made this YouTube video or this series of videos. There you go. So this guy made 10 videos talking and going through Palantir's Foundry
Python
and coding a bunch of stuff, and he got a job at Palantir. You got to just put yourself out there, dude. I mean, you got one of the most exclusive degrees, the Palantir degree, in the job market just by putting himself out there. There you go. Sometimes that's all it takes to actually get people to care about your ideas. That's another thing about high performers. It's not just well in your craft, it's can you get people's attention, right? There's a lot of engineers and coders that are out there, but this guy took the time to make the YouTube videos, communicate effectively, and then get Ted to see the videos. All of that also comes in the process of being a high performer. You need to get people's attention, especially if you're good at your craft. And if you're really good at your craft, you should be able to find a way to get the craft to excel to the point where people want to pay attention. And that leads to a host of different opportunities as well. But it's not as easy as just like being well-rounded and then getting a job like other people do. I was not rejected from any school, so I probably didn't try hard enough. GA Tech, North Carolina State, Tulane all said yes. Yeah, I was rejected from every Ivy, bro. They were like, get out of here. I got waitlisted at Princeton or Harvard, and they were like, get out of here. So I ended up going to Rutgers. But I've said this before in the past. I think Rutgers was the best decision ever. Going to a state school humbles you. You have to fight for your you have to fight to like be relevant when there's 50,000 people. And you're not coddled in an environment where you're like the most special person in the world because you were one of the 2,000 people that got into some elite university. And it makes you take more risks, dude. I took a lot of risks in college. I did a bunch of random things because I wasn't afraid to fail. Whereas in Harvard, I feel like I would have been more afraid to fail because like I'm a Harvard student. I should have this elite. I should be like on top of my game. Whereas in reality, that just leads to a job at JP Morgan. And then you just become another one of the little bankers that are walking through the office every day. Like, it's just like, it's boring. It's like so boring. It's not exciting. You got to take risks and fail at shit. And that usually comes from not being in a coddled environment by trying to get your own name out there. Rutgers is in New Jersey, not in Philly. Rutgers is in New Jersey. Community college and night school for the win. That's facts. Community college and night school for the win. Lulu is late. Thank you for the $10 super chat. Anyone here who had a math teacher in the 90s who told you that you will never have a calculator in your pocket now? We have a calculator, the internet, and AI. Well, that's the other thing, dude. A lot of these teachers are teaching towards things that don't need to be thought of on their own, right? Like, why do we need to memorize all 50 presidents when ChatGPT has the answer? So, like, all the memorization and regurgitation in history class was irrelevant. I remember we took tests around this stuff, and it's like, why? Why would I need to know who the 42nd or the 38th president of the United States was? Like, I don't need to know that. I can get the answer quicker than I can think of it. And so a lot of this stuff is monotonous, and it's not really based on critical thinking. Can y'all imagine the attitude Amit would have if he graduated from Harvard? Dude, that's another thing. I feel like if you graduate from an Ivy League, is anyone in an Ivy League in the chat? Did anyone go to an Ivy League? I feel like everyone has this level of arrogance to them if they graduate the Ivy Leagues. And your humility goes away as soon as you say you graduated from like Harvard or Stanford or something. I don't know. It would be, first of all, I don't think I would be here. Again, I don't think I would have started YouTube because I probably would have been too in my head to start a YouTube channel and put myself out there and take risks. I probably would have felt too special in Harvard. So I don't think I would even be here today. But yeah, the level of arrogance you walk around with that Ivy League degree is up there. Now, granted, if you actually do something in terms of like build something on your own with the Ivy League degree, it's fine. It's just most people, they don't do that. Like, they get a nice job because they can get the job because the legacy name brings them into all these fancy companies, and then they're stuck at the job and they're just living off the dopamine of them feeling like they're important in the world. And I only say this because I have a lot of friends in that situation, dude. I have a lot of friends that went to good schools. They got these jobs and they kind of hate their jobs now because it's just not that exciting as they thought it would be. Oh, my parents would brag like crazy that I'm in Harvard. But I think my mom gets a bigger kick out of me interviewing Vlad and meeting Karp than she would if I graduated Harvard. Like, I think it's cooler to her personally than being like I went to Harvard. Because eventually that gets old, right? Eventually it's like, okay, it's cool, you went to Harvard, so whatever. And then it's over. But some of the other life stuff matters a little bit more. All right, I think that's it for me today. Is that all we got? Nothing too crazy on the timelines for the markets. Again, we got 2 days left. Money market funds, that was the big headline today. They came in 54 billion we added to money market funds, which is, I think, just a manifestation of people taking profits towards the end of the year. And next Thursday, we will see if those increase or decrease. You got Grab right here, 496 after hours. Broadcom was up a little bit today, 2.3%. Palantir, red day, but still relatively green. Since last week, 82.14 on Palantir. We're green. Hood, great day as well, $40.39 after the bell. Up about 2% on the day. Tesla, red day, 454, down about 1.67. And then Palantir, 82.14, 81.98 after the bell. All right, that's it. That's it. I don't know if you count MIT as an IB equivalent. Yeah, MIT is definitely an MIT is harder than the IBs, I think. MIT is like really tough. But I went there. I was immediately humbled by some of the most awesome classmates around me. It was a good experience. Yeah, and again, a lot of the people that go to these schools, although they might, end up in basic sort of consultant positions or whatever, a decent amount of them also are pretty damn creative. And MIT has some of the smartest people in the world, and there's a lot of people that are trying to do a lot of new cool things. That's the part of the reality I don't talk about. Like, what if, and I do it because it's low probability, but what if you go to Harvard and you meet some guy and you come up with the next Facebook, right? Because like, you're smart, he's smart, you're in Harvard, you've got access to opportunities, and then boom, you come up with like the next big tech company. That could have also been a probability that could have happened. I think that's just low probability because it's really hard to do that. But there are those scenarios as well. And being in that environment, I mean, look, every time I go to Stanford, it just feels like people are building the next big tech company because it's in the heart of Palo Alto. And so you kind of feel that a lot of those tech companies are getting started there, which a lot of them still are today. But you've got to be grinding if you actually want to get there versus just taking the easy way out. Christian, thank you for the $10 super chat. Archer has always been on the list, Christian. We've been talking about Archer for the past couple of weeks now, past couple of months. So Archer is on the list. We'll be tracking that very closely in 2025. And we will see what happens. Oh, yeah, MIT's in my name. I don't think I applied to MIT, but I should have applied. And I should have been like, it would be really cool to go to a place where where the college name is in my name. They probably would have been like, get the fuck out of here. It's ridiculous, but that would have been nice. MIT has some of the best engineers in the world. I know a lot of geniuses getting rejected from MIT, so I can't imagine the people who get in. Yeah, MIT, I think, is a step even above Stanford, if I'm not wrong, because it's like purely based on intellect more than anything. But it's up there. The point is, the reason we even brought up the Ivy Leagues is because getting into the Ivy Leagues is hard, but getting into Palantir is really hard. So if you get into Palantir, it's just one of those things where that culture is not dying anytime soon, given the types of talent that they're getting at these companies. All right. I think that's it, folks. Thank you all for being here. We are ending out the show today. We'll be back tomorrow. Market open, 8:45 Friday, ending out the year. I think TJ will be on tomorrow. I think he should be free. If not, that's okay, but I think he will be on. And after Friday, we have Monday left, and we're done. We're done with the year. We're done with the year, which is going to be crazy. As Alex says, you can't start a stream on time. You have no business at MIT. That's fair. That is very fair. Maybe we visit MIT when I go to Boston. Maybe we do a visit of MIT when I go to Boston eventually for the tour and meetups of people. Peter Thiel says college is a scam. Yeah, Peter Thiel's never been a fan of college, dude. Peter Thiel's always hated college. He was just like, why are people wasting their time here? That's why he set up the Thiel Fellowship. And I think more people have started companies from the Thiel Fellowship in the past 10 years than people have at the Ivies. So the Thiel Fellowship has been a very large success, which he gives you like $100,000 for a year to like go build something instead of going to college. But then again, he did also go to Stanford as well. So he's experienced that world. Peter Thiel's argument is like, I went to Stanford Law, went to law school, or went to work at one of the best firms in New York. And then he hated every moment of being inside of that law firm. And that's when he left and he started PayPal. So he definitely had the entrepreneurial bug hitting in his early 20s as well. All right, that is it. As you've noticed, I've stopped clapping when I say that's it. because it'll keep me on for the next 20 minutes, but it doesn't matter because basically we've been on for the last 20 minutes. So I think the clap doesn't even matter. I think Amit is trolling right now. He doesn't want to leave the next 20 minutes. Oh my gosh. I thought Tuesday was a half day. Is it? Is Tuesday a half day? Next week? Yeah, hold on. Let's resolve this right now. Is the market open on December? I think you're right. I think it is a half day. Yeah, it's gonna be open. Oh, it's gonna be a regular. It's gonna be a regular day. Yeah, it looks like it's a regular day on the 31st. No, wait, no. Christmas Eve, 1 p.m. We already did that. Yeah, regular day, December 31st. That's what Yahoo Finance says. Regular day, December 31st. All right. So we have one full day. I felt like today we read it was closed this morning on the 31st. I'll confirm, but it looks like we're going to be open. January 1st, we're definitely closed. January 2nd, we're open again on Thursday. January 2nd, we're open. 31st, it looks like we're open, but January 1st, we are going to be closed. All right, that's actually it. Thank you guys for being part of the show today. We'll be back tomorrow. Market open, 8:45 a.m. We'll keep going from there. And yeah, that's actually it. We're done for the day. All right. I'll see you guys tomorrow, 8:45 in the morning. Again, kind of a boring week for markets. Nothing too crazy, but we're ending out December. And hopefully we can carry on this momentum into 2025. All right. Bye, everyone. Have a good one. Good night. I'll see you guys tomorrow morning on the Market Open. Bye, everyone.